In this video, I'm going to show you how to take your Automata design and start to create your technical drawings for your particular design. And so here I've got somewhat of a sample one that I can kind of work with to show you all that. And with it, I've already created in the animation workspace. I went ahead and exploded this design just to kind of show you what an example would look like. So I always try to go through and make sure the parts are not kind of covering each other up and things like that. And we got somewhat of a good amount of space between parts. And it's very clear to see which parts go where, and everything is just in the open. Go ahead and move back to the design workspace. Some of the ways that you can go through and create design documentation. I'm going to go ahead and go up to New Drawing from Design. For our core training requirements, I'm going to use a B-size title block. So it tends to fit on the page really well, and some schools will have a printer that can print that size of document without having to get into an expensive plotter. And one of the first things we have to do is we're going to create a cover page. So cover pages are pretty easy. I'm going to try a 1:1 scale. Looks like 1:1 is not really going to work. And we also need to put this in an isometric view. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is going to be a northeast isometric that we do. So 1:1 doesn't really work. Let's do 1/2. That's probably going to work pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and click to place that on the drawing. And usually what I like to do is I like to go ahead and shade this view, because then some of the images and stuff like that are going to show up when you go to see that. And then we can always use the text tool. I'm going to have to draw a text box here. And I'm going to go ahead and set the text height to 0.5. And we'll call this in all capital letters, Automata Design Challenge. And if I need to expand this, I can grab the little corner until I get it all in place. And I'm going to highlight the text and bold, so that way it kind of shows up. So the Automata Design Challenge, you can always click and drag on the lettering to kind of center it, place it where you need it. And then here, we can always put down here at the bottom, designed by, and then you can put your name. So I'll put mine in there as placeholder. If you type it and then you need to make a change, highlight it first. So this is going to be 0.5. It's going to be bolded. And I'm going to just make that just a little bit bigger so that way it all fits on a single line. And there's your title page. So all done. Title sheet, ready to go. Very easy, very simple. Now the next page, in order to continue, I'm basing this based off the assembly, the assembled file. If you come down here to the bottom left corner of your screen, you notice there's a big plus sign, quick add. What this does, this adds another sheet to the file. So if I go back, I can see here's the title sheet. The new sheet is where I'm going to do, as we go through the listing, I'm going to go through the exploded view assembly drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and go up to base view. I'm going to choose under representation storyboard 1, which is going to be our exploded view. And 1/5 is the scale. Let's try 1/4. I always try to give it as much room. I've even got 1/3 in here somewhere. Or I did it one time, but we can also type it in if we need. So 1/3. That might fit somewhat well. So I'm going to go ahead and click to place. If we need to downsize it, we can. So here are all our parts. What I usually like to do as well, I like to create another base view, and I like to put a northeast isometric view kind of right here. And let's try 1/2. Looks like it's going to be pretty big. Let's try just 1/3. And then go ahead and say OK. I'm going to leave some room for my parts list. The isometric view I tend to like to shade and then say OK. Okay, so there it is. And then what I'm going to do is parts list and balloons. So typically on an exploded view, sometimes they show you doing a multi-view. I've seen them done 2 different ways. This is the way that I kind of prefer to do it. Let's give the exploded view with all the detail, show it all assembled, and then that way it looks well. So I'm going to choose parts list. I'm going to choose the exploded view. Parts list, we want to go through and do, we do have some sub-assemblies, so we want to go from structure. Instead of first level, we want to choose all level. And then I usually place it down here in the bottom corner. I'll get a snap that happens, and then I can go ahead and do that. Now, one thing I can do, once I place the parts list, double click on it, I can take away like the blank column with the description. I like the table direction to go down, but it could go up. Either way, it would be fine, and I'm going to say close. And so there we have our parts list, and we can always kind of move this kind of by it as well. The other thing too you got to watch are your balloons. So the balloons get placed, but we may need to kind of reposition them. So just by clicking and dragging even on the arrows, you want to make sure it points to the part and not covers it up. And so I'm going to kind of move these just a little bit closer and kind of arrange them. And this is just kind of how you do that. Okay, I'm probably not going to do all of these in this video just because it's kind of repetitive and kind of tedious. But you want to try to find good placements where lines are not crossing each other, and you can, kind of read these very clearly, and all the formatting is very consistent. So like here, this number 1 could probably be better suited right about here, and I wouldn't be crossing lines, and I can move that, and I can just kind of place these a little bit better. Okay, so that would be, and as you can tell, got a bunch of them up here. I'm going to have to let my compulsiveness go as I go and leave this alone. But that's kind of how you would create your assembly drawing for this particular project. Okay, so assembly drawings can be done this way as well, especially when you have lots of parts lists, and sometimes a multi-view being added in. This isn't very feasible, so this works just as well. All right, I'm going to add in another sheet. This is going to be your sub-assembly. So now I'm going to go into base view. I'm going to choose my part. My part is going to, from the base view, here we go. And for right now, I'm going to put this into the northeast isometric position. And I'm going to go ahead and click, and I'm going to say OK. Now, what I want to do in this sub-assembly is I just want to show the follower, the roller, and just show them together, and then show them kind of exploded as well. So I'm going to double click on this view, and I'm going to bump this scale up to about 1/2, and even then I might even go 1:1. Even though it's running off the page, that's okay, because over here in your browser, I'm going to find one of the follow roller sub-assemblies, and I'm going to right click on that, and I'm going to say suppress all except selected. I could manually uncheck all these boxes, which is going to take away the visibility on those parts, but if I right click and say suppress all except what I have selected, there is going to be my follower sub-assembly. And then the other thing I'm going to do, click another base view. I'm going to follow the very similar method. I'm going to bring in storyboard 1, but this time, and even then I'll go 1:1 on this one. I'm going to click to place it, and I'll say OK. Now here's what will happen. The first view that I placed on the sheet is right up here, so I'm going to collapse this menu, and here is the second one. And I'm going to do the very similar process. Find that sub-assembly, right click, suppress all except selected, and now here I get the exploded view of the roller and the follower. So this is going to show kind of the assembly drawing. Now what I want to do as well, I want to have this line that goes down. This is referring to something else that's there. So what I might want to do is I might want to throw the box top. So I'm going to toggle, check that there, and have the box top in there, because then it just looks like, it's actually going to go somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on this. I need to downgrade the scale. I'm going to go maybe 3/4 scale on this, and I can always type it in, 3:4, say close, and then I'll place the exploded view here. I can double click on the isometric view of the assembly, and then I can always just follow the same steps of going to tables, going to parts list, selecting the exploded view. We're going to do all level, so that way it gives us all the parts. I'm going to click it in the bottom corner, and then I'm going to change the table direction to go down. And you're going to see how sometimes it doesn't always balloon the part very well. So let me pull this over. So this looks pretty good. Now I can always go to balloon, and then it says to select the edge of the component. There we go. So there's that one. And then you may have to kind of hover over this. So sometimes it gives me this, you can tell it's giving me this error message. So it's like it's having trouble finding it. So I'm just going to say close for right now. And let me see if I can grab balloon here and see if I can get this top piece. Sometimes it gets a little picky on these sub-assemblies. And even though this is a component, I don't know, it's having a little trouble finding it. So let me see if I can select the component over here. Nope, not doing it. Alright, I was getting this to work earlier. Let me double click here. Let me change the visual style. Sometimes Fusion's just picky. So I'm going to go ahead and just say OK for right now. What might help is I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And this is going to be called Automata Design Drawing, and automatically puts in there, I'm going to put demo, so that way I know this is my demonstration for the video. Sometimes saving it, sometimes going back, making sure that your file is saved. So this one has been saved, luckily. And going to balloon. Let's see if I can pick up the edge. And it is just not picking it up. So if it doesn't pick it up, that's okay. Okay, so here we're actually getting, I actually got one off the hole. There we go. So for some reason, let me see if I can put it to one of the other parts on this. For some reason it picked it up on the edge of the hole. So we'll put it right about there. Usually I don't like to go through and have it. It's looking for these green points. So, but at least it's ballooned, and that's kind of what we'll go with. All right, so after we have those sub-assemblies, now we go into the parts. So this, again, just to kind of keep this video short, I'm going to show you how to do maybe 1 or 2 parts, and then the process is going to be very similar. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new sheet. Now we're into part drawings. I'm going to click on base view. I'm going to go ahead and go 1-to-1. And even though this is going to look really big on our paper, I can go ahead and place it. So here's what the front view looks like. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select the box bottom, hold Control, select all the box pieces, and then I'm going to right click and I'm going to say suppress all except selected. And then it's going to just have the box. So it looks like the box is still pretty big. Let me go to, we're probably going to go to the half scale on this because we're going to need to have some placement for dimensions. So here's my projected view. Select, let's do a top view, right side view, isometric view. Double click on the isometric to change it to shaded. Say close, and throw some things on here like center marks for each one of our holes, as well as I'm going to go ahead and place a first dimension. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this corner and click on the first hole here. And then what I can do is utilize baseline dimension. Click on the first, try that one more time. Click on the first dimension that pops up. And I picked this line, so I don't want to do that one. I want to pick on this extension line. There we go. Keep going down, clicking the centers of the hole, and I can even click to put the overall width. So this would go through and help with that. I can go ahead and dimension from the depth of the box, as well as to where the center points for the holes are going to be. I can put the overall height. I can put the overall, I've already got the overall depth of here. I've got the width, height, and depth, so I'm good there. But what I may need to do is dimension placements for this hole. And one thing we can do to try to clean up a drawing is whenever you have a lot of repeated elements. So for example, I'm going to use the text tool. I'm going to put a little note down here at the bottom. I'll put note, all MDF pieces are 0.25 inch TYP, and TYP is going to stand for typical. So I'm going to kind of blow this up a little bit, maybe at a 0.5. Let's do 0.25. And bold, and then I'll go ahead and make this a little bit bigger for the box, and I'll put this at the bottom of the drawing. Another thing you can do, dimension wise, I can dimension one of the holes. So like for here, if I just dimension one hole, they're all 0.5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click once I place the dimension, and I'm going to add TYP. And that's going to say that anytime, let me put a space in there, and that's going to say that any hole that you see is going to be a 1/2 inch no matter what. So, and that's going to be what we see there. So there's our box, and we have our dimension drawing. I'm going to go ahead and add one more, and this will finish out the video. Again, you have more parts than just what I'm showing in the video, but this is going to be kind of what we're looking at. So I'm going to bring in another box view. Let's put this at, this one we're going to focus on doing one of the axle bushings. So I'll do a 1:1 scale, place it on the drawing and say OK. I'm going to find one of the axle bushings. So there's axle bushing. Right click, unsuppress all except selected. This is the size of it. It's probably pretty small. Let's go to a 2:1 scale. Let's also change this over to hidden and visible edges. And the other thing that I like too is that this really isn't probably the best front view for this, so I probably need to click and change this over to the left side. So this looks a little bit better, gives a lot more detail and everything there. So I'm going to hit close, and then I can project. This is a symmetrical part. I can show like the depth here, click here. If I double click on the ISO view to shade it, and then here I can go ahead and start dimensioning and putting this here. I could go through and do a top view if I need it, but this view is just a rotation of the right side view. So I'm actually going to roll back that placement and hit cancel. All right, so as you go along, we can always center mark the outside using the outside edge. That way we know that's directly in the center. And then we can start to dimension. In other parts, you may want to go through and do a detail view. So I'm going to click detail view, select this view in the center or anywhere where you click. I'm going to go ahead and just draw a circle around. I'm going to stop right about here. There we go. And then I can go ahead and place my detail view. Here we go. So there's the scale. It doubles the scale whatever we're working with. And usually what I like to do, if you don't want to worry about putting dimensions, all that, you can put dimensions up here for the size of this hole. You can also do center mark if you need on this part, especially since it's kind of outside. But then that way you don't have to worry about putting any dimensions, for example, on this. So you can put the 2 diameter dimensions here, over here, put your overall height. And that should take care of everything. So this is just kind of one way. We would to, again, here you would end up having all of your drawings by the end. And when you get to the end, you can always export the PDF, and you can choose all sheets, or you can select what kind you want, and you could always export this out to a PDF file, so that way you can share this. So these drawings are going to be one of the requirements for your Automata Design Challenge for core training. And by the end, you may have a lot of drawings. So that's one way that you can go through, and even as discussed, in some cases you can put multiple drawings on one sheet, but this is one way you can do it in your classroom, and that way that you have a good amount of room and a good amount of detail showing on each one of your parts that you used in your mechanical design.